Alright, what's going on? Today I will be adding modules to my space station in orbit around Minmus, but before I can do that, I need to finish up a contract to put a new space station in orbit around the Mun. So here you can see I have put together a rocket using mostly KW Rocketry parts, although the engines on the first stage are from Bluedog Design Bureau. They're the F1 engines that are supposed to go into the Saturn V, but I needed something that would give me enough thrust to get this thing to take off. So I figured, if like one of the most powerful engines ever made won't do the job, I don't know what will. I mean, I'm pretty sure the F1 is like the most powerful engine ever made, but I don't know, there might be something that made it off the drawing board but never had a successful flight. Whatever the case is, I'm just going to skip around to all the stage separations because this isn't the main part of the episode and I don't want it to take up too much time. Alright, so I have gotten this station into orbit around the Mun, and it does have a lab on it and a greenhouse, so I mean, it could be used to crunch science data, and it is a little bit self-sufficient, so who knows, I may expand upon this or send Kerbals to it whenever I need some science research done in orbit around the Mun, but for now this is just something I did for a contract. So with that all being said, now I can get on to the actual goal of this video. Alright, so now I have the first module launching on this rocket I made. I've been using KW parts a little bit more than usual, and mainly just because as much as I love the ability to make replicas that Bluedog and Tantares gives me, sometimes I just want to launch a creation of my own, or launch something with a creation of my own, I should say. And so I put this rocket together, and it is going pretty well. Although one gripe I do have with this design I made up is the boosters last longer than the first stage, and they also, the boosters and the first stage last about the same amount of time, so like, I don't know, it just kind of isn't what I usually think of when I think of a rocket with boosters. I usually think of like the SRBs going out, and then the first stage is able to burn for a while before it runs out of fuel. Whatever the case is, you can see I have this second stage that will be getting my rocket into orbit in a few seconds, and then there's a third stage to get into orbit around Minmus. And here you can see I have one of USI's agroponics modules on this, because I want to try and make the station self-sufficient on supplies. I know until a little later down the tech tree I can't really freeze the habitation time of Kerbals that aren't pilots, but I don't know, I mean, USI is a pretty hard mod to learn, and I understand why. I mean, there's all sorts of different resources, there's the supply chains and everything, but I'm thinking if I just read up on what is told to me about the parts through the game, I might be able to figure it out, because like the ISRUs tell you what resources can be turned into other resources, because you go through its tab and you see all the converter options, and And then also, I mean, if you just put a survey satellite into orbit around a body and have an idea of where everything is, and then you know, land here, collect these resources, and make these things out of them. Now, I'm sure I'm oversimplifying it, and there's no way I know what I'm talking about because I haven't even gotten far enough into the game to really be doing that, but I'm getting there. But anyways, you can see I'm just getting my Minmus encounter adjusted so I can rendezvous with the station. So I went ahead and just cut to the part where I'm getting my rendezvous set up, and it's actually a pretty simple thing to do from a somewhat elliptical orbit, I think. Or maybe the elliptical orbit, or not elliptical, eccentric. I think elliptical is the tilt of an orbit, or like a really tilted orbit, and eccentric is like a really non-circular orbit, or like one that's like really oval shaped. Whatever the case is, I just end up inserting myself into orbit around Minmus using the third stage, and then I go ahead and just ditch said third stage after a while, and I begin slowing down my relative velocity to the station. And so here you can see me switching the nav ball to target mode and just doing that lowering of relative velocity I was talking about earlier. Before, and like, I mean, I almost have my relative speed completely killed off, and now I'm just pulling towards my target to begin to get a more close intercept. So now that I am at said closer intercept, I am going to once again kill off my relative speed and point towards the station and run the engine. And there's kind of a bit of a specific way I wanted the module to be facing. I wanted it so that way the windows, if that's what you could call them, would be pointing towards the Skylab solar panels. And my reasoning behind that was that I had put solar panels on the agroponics bay, and I wasn't sure if whenever they opened they might clip through the Skylab panels and break a bunch of stuff. And the reason I even put those panels on the agroponics bay in the first place was because I wasn't sure if growing supplies in it would consume electricity, so I went ahead and assumed it would, and added a means of generating additional electricity for that. Although looking back at it, I probably could have looked at it in the part description and looked at its thing that says it's a resource converter and see what resources it converts into supplies. And from what I can tell, it's just mulch and fertilizer. Like, electric charge has nothing to do with the agroponics processes or whatever. So I kind of messed up my orientation, but a simple undocking and turning a little bit, or spinning I should say, was a quick fix for that issue. And so yeah, I went ahead and opened up the solar panels, and then these construction ports are interesting. You apparently use this option to multi-weld, is what it's called, and it basically makes the module not just docked to whatever, but it actually makes it like a part of the craft, like it was like that whenever you first built and launched it, which is an interesting thing that MKS seems to do. Alright, so here is the launch of the next module. It's just a, it's supposed to be an airlock, but it's also some extra hab space. Like I have a hitchhiker storage can and 2 observation cupolas mounted to the side of said hitchhiker storage can, and then like on that there's an adapter with a Skylab airlock whatever on it. Well, I'm just going to cut through most of this launch since it's pretty much the same thing as the aquaponics bay launch. Granted, the SRBs go out before the liquid fuel does, or the liquid fuel core first stage, whatever you want to call it, does, so I think I'll let that happen and then I'll cut through all the other stage separations and getting to Minmus and all of that. Although there you can see I just kind of throttled down the main engine, try and make sure that those solid rocket boosters go out before the first stage, and they still go out at about the same time, but it is what it is. Yeah, and so here you can see a better look at the airlock. Another thing I forgot to mention is it has a reflector and antenna thing set up, whatever, from the Near Future Exploration mod. And I don't even know why I put that on there because it's not even necessary, but I guess it was a good test of how that works, even though I pretty much already knew it. But it's like basically you have an antenna that sends a signal out to a reflector, and then that reflector amplifies the signal, like, to make it stronger. It's the simplest way I can put it. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I also put some experiments on it. It's like I have 2 Science Juniors for material studies high above and in orbit around Minmus. Or is it high above? I think it's high above and low orbit around Minmus, whatever. 2 different reports for the scientists in the lab to research. And I also put a GORSAT on it. And I'm trying to remember this, RPWS is what I believe it's called. Yeah, RPWS antenna. Just kind of ran that in orbit around Kerbal and then put it all into one of the science storage containers. And then I went through all the different experiments and set them to have their data researched. So the modified, well, not really modified, but the service module that was going to act as a tug to dock the module to the station ran out of monopropellant, and I ended up having to undock the Apollo command and service module looking thing, because it's definitely not a replica, but whatever the case is, I ended up having to undock that and dock it to the module, and then detach this tug, which I'm deorbiting now, and have it docked to the station that way. And it worked, but I really wish I had footage of it, but for some reason I didn't record it, so I guess that is what it is. Alright, so here you can see I was just checking up on my Kerbal's hab timers because Bob's ran out for some odd reason, and all I can chalk it up to is the lab, or station whatever, ran out of electricity. Here you can see I'm just time warping to speed up the lab's transmission of data, and also to see how the hydroponics bay is functioning. So with all that science data, I only really decided to unlock 2 things, those 2 things being heavy aerodynamics and trying to remember the other note, scanning tech. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's the end of this video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to like and subscribe, and if there's anything you have to say about this video, well, feel free to leave a comment below. And until next time, I am out.